Hello everyone, welcome to HFY Beyond Terror. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories, where humanity's underestimated and then proves...
I've trained warriors for 19 cycles, and the galaxy has an endless talent for humiliation. You'd think, after that long, you'd become impossible to surprise. You'd think the patterns would repeat. The proud recruits, the reckless. Geniuses, the polite cowards, the species who compensate for frailty with cruelty, and the ones who have claws just to flex them when the instructor walks by. And for a long time, that was true. Then the humans arrived. My name is Khar-Voss Dran, Master of Edgecraft at Naraka War Academy, and I teach advanced blade form engineering to cadets selected from 11 allied systems. Our academy floats above a violet gas giant whose storms crackle with permanent lightning. The sky never looks the same twice. It's beautiful. It's also the kind of place where a careless breath can kill you. Perfect for training. On the first day of the semester, 61 students filed into my forge hall, all armored in whatever nature had given them, scales like hammered plating, fur as dense as insulation, feathers stiff with static charge, and chitin that clicked whenever they shifted their weight. I recognized almost all of them. Vraxi, with 4 arms and a cultural obsession with dueling etiquette. Malith, the skeletal amphibians who could hold their breath for an hour and still complain about humidity. Solori, the floating thinkers whose bodies were mostly gas and arrogance. And in the far back, standing quietly as if she'd been placed there by accident, a creature so small she barely reached the chest of the average cadet, a human. Her file name read Sarah Vale. I'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. Humans had only joined the coalition recently, but the way they moved through politics and war alike was unnerving. They were loud, fast, ambitious. The kind of species that made generals double-check their fleets. But rumors are easy. Seeing one in my forge hall was something else. No armored plates, no claws, no venom. No throat sacs or bone spines or plasma glands. Just soft skin, dark eyes that watched too carefully, and a small body that looked like it belonged in a civilian university, not in a war academy where half the students could break stone with a fist. I remember thinking, this will be a disaster. The first day always followed the same procedure. I delivered the opening lecture. They pretended to care. Then we got to work. I stood at the head platform, my talons tapping against the iron railing as my voice carried into the chamber. Behind me, the walls were lined with weapons from conquered worlds. Curved blades, jagged axes, spears designed to pierce vacuum suits, and ancient artifacts that still radiated ceremonial violence. "Welcome," I said, opening my mandibles. In what humans would call a smile and most other species called a warning. This course is not about cutting. Anyone can cut. I let the silence grow heavy. This course is about making a weapon worthy of the hand that holds it. A few cadets straightened up. Good. By the end of the cycle, you will forge a blade from raw stock to finished edge. You may use standard alloys, exotic composites, cultural techniques, or innovations your ancestors would spit on. Then you will prove your work in combat. The hall stirred. Nervous pride, anticipation, fear. Then, against everything I knew about academy etiquette, the human raised her hand. Not boldly, not aggressively, just politely, like she was in a classroom where instructors weren't capable of tearing someone in half. I paused mid-sentence. Yes, I snapped, not because she deserved it, but because that was how the room worked. "Sir," she said, voice calm, "are we restricted to the forge vault materials?" I blinked. The vault contained rare metals from half the coalition. It contained starship-grade plate and experimental crystalline alloys that cost more than some colonies. I'd watched students argue over fragments the size of a thumb. "Restricted?" I repeated. You have access to a greater selection than most militaries. She nodded as if I'd answered a different question. I understand. But are we allowed to use materials that aren't listed? If we find them. A few cadets snorted. I stared at her for a long moment, searching for the hidden insult. Humans, they had a way of speaking without revealing what game they were playing. As long as it can be forged, I said finally, waving a talon. And as long as it holds. An edge. I don't care if you shape it out of compressed sand. Sarah smiled, almost grateful. Thank you, sir. That smile should have warned me. It didn't. Weeks passed, the forge hall became a storm of labor. Hammers rang like war drums. Cooling vats hissed. Sparks fell like insect swarms. Cadets selected their materials and began the rituals of creation. A Vraxi student designed a twin-edged saber with a rotating grip. A Molluth cadet created a slender piercer of reinforced titanium sharp enough to slip between armor plates. Even one of the Silori managed to produce a semi-solid blade using hardened resin technology and smugness. Ciravale, she did nothing. She attended lectures, passed examinations, practiced technique drills. But her workstation remained bare. No raw stock, no sketches, no prototypes. And she spent an unusual amount of time in the biomedical wing. At first, I assumed she'd gotten lost. Then I started receiving messages from other faculty. Human student requesting anatomy lab access. Human student studying skeletal density variations across predator species. Human student requesting permission to examine recovered carcass remains. It was enough that I finally confronted her after class. She was cleaning her tools with meticulous care. Every item aligned like a soldier's equipment before inspection. Cadet Vale, I said, explain your time in biomedical. Research, sir. For what? She met my gaze without flinching. My blade. My mandibles tightened. This course is edgecraft, not surgery. I know, she said, but I want to understand structure. I want to know what materials are meant to survive. I crossed my arms, towering over her. Most students would have shrunk under that posture. She didn't. You understand the final trial requires a functional weapon. Yes, sir. And you intend to produce one without using anything. From the vault. Yes, sir. The certainty in her voice irritated me. I should have pressed harder. But my own rules trapped me. So I let it go. I assumed she'd fail. 2 weeks before final trial, I called her into my office. My office was small, filled with plaques and blade prints from past graduates. Students who'd become mercenary captains, fleet officers, even. One Coalition Council guard. Sarah sat in the chair opposite me like she'd done it before. 14 days, I said. That's what you have left. You've forged nothing. That's correct. You will fail. I won't. I leaned forward, claws scraping metal. Do you understand what failure means? Expulsion. Disgrace. Your government will never sponsor you again. She nodded slowly. I understand, sir. Then why haven't you started? She reached into her bag and produced a wrapped bundle, dark cloth soaked with preserving oil. She placed it on my desk. Then she unfolded it. Bone, not a small piece, not a shard. A long, pale curve, thick at one end, tapered at the other, polished with age and natural density. It looked like the femur of something that had once hunted everything around it. I stared. What? Is that? A leg bone, she said. From a Ravith stalker. They live in the lower rings of Naraka Station's abandoned habitats. My spine prickled. Those creatures were a nightmare. Silent predators engineered long ago for war, then abandoned when their creators lost interest. They were the sort. A thing that forced maintenance crews to travel in pairs with flamers. You brought me a corpse bone, I said flatly. I brought you a material, she corrected. One with natural structure and impact tolerance. Bone is brittle, I hissed. It splinters. It cracks. It fails. She smiled again, this time not playful. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Maybe untreated, she said, but bone is layered. It's composite. It's designed to take force and not collapse. She rapped it again and stood. I'll present in 14 days, she said. I promise. Then she left me sitting there with the uncomfortable realization that humans didn't fear the same things other species did. The private forge for 2 weeks. She vanished into the restricted forging chambers, the rooms reserved for hazardous materials, experimental blades, and students likely to explode. I allowed it because I was curious. I regretted that curiosity, because every day I heard whispers, the humans using bone. She's insane. She shattered her own weapon on the first strike. Even I believed that, until the day of the final trial. The Arena Naraka Combat Arena is a circular pit of reinforced composite, its floor configurable for any terrain. Today it was. Flat, clean, unforgiving. A stage meant to expose weakness. Students presented one by one. Some blades were excellent. Some were decent. 2 shattered, and then, Cadet Sarah Vale, I announced, enter. The arena went silent like. It had been drained of air. She emerged from the tunnel holding her weapon in one hand. And for the first time in 19 cycles, I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't just a bone shaped into a blade. It was art. The femur had been carved and polished into a forward curving edge that looked like a crescent of moonlight turned predatory. The handle was wrapped in textured hide. The spine of the blade was etched with tiny markings, human script, perhaps, or symbols of personal meaning. It gleamed, not like ivory, like something alive. She held it casually, as if it weighed nothing. Instructor Dran, she called up to me. I present my blade. My voice returned slowly. Begin. Target 1. Synthetic flesh. She approached the dummy with quiet grace. No unnecessary movement. No showmanship. She struck once. The blade passed through the target as if the gel had been missed. The mannequin split cleanly, toppling into 2 halves. The crowd murmured. I remained unimpressed. Cutting flesh was easy. Target 2. Metal column. She stepped toward the aluminum. Killer. The blade should have dulled. It should have chipped. It should have shattered. She swung. There was a sound. Like crystal singing. The pillar separated. Clean as a surgical slice. And when she pulled the weapon back, the edge was perfect. No fractures. No imperfections. Professor Valerin, master of material science, stared beside me with all 3 eyes wide. That's not possible. He whispered. I agreed. But the data scanners DIDN single quotes T. Target 3. Duraplative final material test was a Duraplate slab 2 inches thick, designed for starship hull reinforcement. The goal wasn't to cut through. The goal was to leave a mark. A quarter-inch indentation was considered elite. Sarah stepped close to her blade and without hesitation ran her thumb lightly along the edge. Blood appeared instantly. The crowd reacted with disbelief. I understood her message. This isn't a gimmick. This is real. She turned to the Duraplate, grounded her feet, and struck with everything her human body could produce. The sound rang like a bell across the arena. Scanners flared. The measurement appeared on the main screens. 1.71 inches. I froze. That wasn't a mark. That was a wound. In starship armor. From bone. From a creature with no claws. The arena went silent in the way silence becomes its own form of violence. The scan eye ordered a molecular scan immediately. The results arrived and I read them twice. Then a third time. Because I was certain the system had failed. It hadn't. The bone was not just bone anymore. She'd treated each layer differently. Hardened the outer cortical structure until it rivaled ceramics. Compressed the inner porous. Matrixed to remove weak points while preserving shock absorption. Infused polymers into the microchannels, bonding organic material to synthetic reinforcement. She hadn't forged a bone blade. She'd engineered a hybrid weapon. She'd created a new category of material. Velryn's voice came out soft, almost reverent. She didn't copy metallurgy. No, I said. She replaced it. Combat trial. The drone entered. 7 feet tall. Standard training blade. Intermediate aggression protocol. It moved first, as it always did. Syrah sidestepped with effortless economy. The drone's strike hit empty air. Before it recovered, she was inside its range. 3 cuts. Clean. Efficient. Fatal. If the drone had been alive, the drone escalated. Faster strikes, feints, wider arcs. She met it all. Her bone blade clashed against polymer and didn't crack, didn't chip, didn't protest. And then she ended it with a downward strike to the shoulder joint, severing the mechanism enough to force shutdown. The drone collapsed. Syrah stepped back, breathing hard, and held her blade steady. The arena erupted. Even the skeptics stood. Even the ones who hated humans applauded. I stared down at her in the pit and realized something terrible. I had been wrong about her from the start. The question. I called her to the instructor platform. She walked up, calm as ever, blade in hand. I should have ended it with praise and a perfect score. But I needed answers. Cadet Vale? I said so. The whole arena could hear. Why bone? With access to our vault, why choose this? She looked up at me, eyes bright. Because everyone else would use the vault, she said simply. And they'd make excellent weapons. She lifted her blade. So it caught the arena lights. But humans, we do something different. She paused, letting the silence lean in. When the galaxy reaches for the most advanced option, we ask what's already available. What nature built. What people ignore. A ripple moved through the crowd. My ancestors made weapons from bone. Before we had metal, we used whatever we could find. It was crude, but it worked. Her gaze sharpened, and the structure of bone is incredible. It absorbs impact. It flexes. It's layered. It's already a composite material. She lowered her blade as if finishing a private oath. So I wanted to take what I came from and combine it with what you taught me. She smiled, and for once there was nothing unsettling about it. You said a weapon should be an extension of its maker. She tapped the blade lightly against her palm. This is mine. After I gave her highest honors, I made sure the scan data was archived, wrote my semester report, and added a recommendation I'd never once included before. Encourage students to explore non-standard materials beyond vault inventory. Cadet Syrah. Vale demonstrated that unconventional biological composites may exceed established performance thresholds, suggest elective modules in biomechanical engineering and material hybridization. 3 days later, the coalition sent messages asking for study rights. Military councils wanted prototypes. Corporations wanted licenses. Scientific institutions wanted her paper. And all I could do was sit in my office, staring at the empty forge benches, trying not to laugh, because one human had walked into my class and turned a piece of death into something the galaxy couldn't ignore. And I realized the real danger of humans wasn't their strength or speed or technology. It was their refusal to accept limits as real. They saw waste as potential. They saw old materials as unexplored science. They saw bones and thought, what if this could win wars? The next semester, when the new cadets arrived, I added one line to my opening speech. You have access to our vault, I told them. But you also have access to an entire universe of materials most warriors never consider. I paused, letting the forge lights glint across the weapons behind me. Last semester, a human forged a blade from bone. I smiled, so don't be safe. And for the first time in 19 cycles, I meant it.